Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
So we have some questions related to our domestic child labor. So our first question is, what are the fundamental or basic laws for the protection of children rights in Pakistan?
There are multiple legislations or laws that govern the issue of protection of children. One of the laws is an act that was passed in 2017. Through this act, a commission was formed who's been given the mandate to consider various policies of the government, various laws that relate to protection of children. So that's one law. Then there is another law which was made in 2018 specifically relating to the protection of children. And then under this law, the government also framed rules in 2021. Pursuant to this law, basically the idea is that there are child protection institutes that are created, there are bodies, governmental bodies that can actually assess if there are any kids who need protection, what kind of protection they need. They can then come up with plans how to protect the interests of that particular child. So just to give an example, there are two laws which are federal laws applicable within Islamabad that do address the issues of protection of children, and there are several statutory bodies that have been created under these laws to do that.
Is there any specific law which prohibits domestic child labor in Pakistan?
Yes. So there are multiple laws in provinces as well. But in Islamabad and at the federal level, there is one act which is called the Employment of Children Act of 1991. That particular law bans employment of children as domestic labor. And then subsequently, there's another act that was passed in 2022, which is called the Islamabad Capital Territory Domestic Workers Act. Both of these laws expressly and clearly prohibit employment of children. Under the 1991 Act, the age of the child that you cannot employ as labor is under 14, whereas under the 2022 Act, the age is below 16.
What are the responsibility of government to stop domestic child labor in Pakistan?
I think one of the most important things is that the government actually implements these laws, which are in field, that clearly prohibit child labor. But unfortunately, the issue that we're facing today is that of implementation. The laws are not implemented, and that's to do because of various reasons. So a lot of these bodies, what does a law do? It says what is prohibited, what is allowed, what public authorities should do. But then in order to implement it, there's several bodies or entities that are created, particularly for a purpose. Now, if the law says that these bodies are to be created by the government and the government doesn't actually create them or make them functional or give them enough resources and expertise to carry out the purposes of those laws, then the laws would be there on the book, but they won't really be implemented. So this is the responsibility of the government to ensure that the laws that have been promulgated are actually implemented.
What suggestions you can make to improve the law in respect of domestic child labor?
Very frankly, I think the problem is not with the law itself. The problem is elsewhere. And before we go to government and the suggestions what the government can do, I think we need to look at us as a society, that what are we doing about it. And I'm very grateful that you guys are doing all of this, because the first thing is the awareness, right? So people should know that this is something which is illegal. We see in our houses, in our friends' houses, in our families' houses, out in the market, in the restaurants, we see that there are kids who are domestic workers. We see little kids taking care of kids. There should be enough awareness and courage for us to call that out and say that this is illegal. We should tell, and very respectfully tell our elders that this is something that we shouldn't be doing. So that's the first step. Secondly, we've talked about the issue and where the government is lacking. They should implement the laws. But I think the issue is bigger than that. The issue is that why people send their kids to work somewhere. The problem is bigger. The problem is because of lack of employment. The problem is because of poverty. The problem is because of lack of family planning. There's lack of social mobility. So if someone who doesn't have the money to feed 6-7 kids, he doesn't have the money to actually provide them basic necessities, he would possibly think that it's better to send him somewhere where he'll be given food, will have a house to live in, and will be paid for it. So the government, of course, there has to be something for the social security of such families. And there should be some incentive for those families and for those kids to send their kids to school. So just bringing in laws won't be enough. We need to address the actual problem that leads to child labor.
My very last question. Could you share an example of challenging domestic child labor case you have worked on and how you approached it?
Very frankly, I haven't worked on any child labor cases. I've recently been engaged by the Islamabad High Court as an amicus in this recent case of the domestic helper Rizwana, who was employed by in the house of a judge. So in relation to that issue, I've been engaged by the Islamabad High Court as an amicus in that case. I'm to assist the court in trying to curb this practice. And of course, one of the issues that the court will obviously be facing as well is that there are multiple legislations, but we don't see the implementation of it. So what are the challenges in the implementation? So yes, that's
Thank you very much. We feel really honored and pleasure to be here, and thank you for your time.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.